Jake Morrison stood in his backyard looking at the dying tomato plants. The red fruits hung heavy on weak stems that could not hold their weight. He scratched his gray beard and shook his head. 3 years of trying to grow vegetables and he still could not get it right. The soil was good and the weather was perfect, but something always went wrong. His daughter, Lisa, walked out of the house carrying 2 cups of coffee. She was 15 years old with dark hair like her mother and green eyes that always seemed to be laughing at something. She handed Jake 1 cup and looked at the sad tomato plants. "Maybe we should just buy our vegetables from the market," she said with a small smile. Jake took a sip of the hot coffee and nodded. "Your mother always said I had black thumbs instead of green ones." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the morning sun rise over the fields of New Haven Colony. The small farming world was home to about 50,000 humans who had come here looking for peace and quiet. Most of them were farmers and their families, but some were like Jake, people who had seen too much war and wanted to forget. The other colonists knew who Jake Morrison was even though he never talked about his past. They called him the ghost of Arcturus behind his back, the man who ended the Xanthari War by himself, the soldier who could kill a dozen enemies without making a sound, the legend who had saved millions of lives by destroying an alien fleet, but here on New Haven he was just Lisa's father, the man who burned breakfast every morning and could not grow tomatoes to save his life. He liked it that way. "Dad, can I go to the lake with my friends today?" Lisa asked. Jake looked down at his daughter. She was growing up fast, and soon she would not want to spend time with her old father anymore. The thought made his chest feel tight, but he pushed it away. "Take your device and be back before dark," he said. Lisa smiled and kissed his cheek. "Thanks, Dad. I love you." She ran back into the house to get ready, and Jake watched her go. His wife, Mary, had died when Lisa was 10 years old, a sickness that the doctors could not fix. Since then, it had just been the 2 of them against the world. Jake finished his coffee and walked to the small shed behind the house. Inside were his tools and some other things he kept hidden. Under a loose board in the floor was a metal box. He opened it and looked at the contents. A military device that he had not used in 3 years. Fake identification papers. Credit chips with enough money to disappear forever. And a small photo of his old squad, the dead devils they had called themselves. 4 soldiers who had done impossible things during the war. Elena Rodriguez, who could fly anything with engines. Danny Chun, who could blow up a building with kitchen supplies. Rick Barnes, who never missed a shot. And Jake, who could plan missions that should not have worked but always did. After the war, they had all gone separate ways. Jake had promised himself he would never use the device to contact them. That part of his life was over. He was just a father now trying to raise his daughter in peace. He closed the box and put it back under the floor. As he walked back to the house, he saw his neighbors working in their fields. Old Pete washing his hover truck. The Johnson family fixing their fence. Kids playing in the dirt roads between houses. This was a good place, a safe place. Nothing bad had ever happened on New Haven Colony. The planet was too far from the main trade routes for pirates to bother with. Too small for the big governments to care about. Too peaceful for anyone to attack. Jake went inside and started making breakfast. He burned the eggs like always, and Lisa laughed at him like always. They ate together and talked about normal things. School and friends and what movie they wanted to watch that night. After breakfast, Lisa left to meet her friends and Jake sat alone in his kitchen. Through the window, he could see the tomato plants dying in his garden. Maybe tomorrow he would pull them up and plant something else. Something easier to grow. He did not know that high above the planet 3 alien ships were moving through space toward New Haven. The Krell Empire had found another world to add to their growing collection of slave planets. They had studied the colony for weeks and decided it would be easy to take. The aliens had made one mistake, though. They had not checked the colony records carefully enough to see who lived there. They did not know that the most dangerous human in the galaxy was growing tomatoes in his backyard and planning to spend a quiet day with his daughter. If they had known, they might have chosen a different target, but it was too late now. The ships were coming, and Jake Morrison was about to remember why the galaxy had once feared his name. The attack began at sunrise when most of the colonists were still sleeping. Jake woke to the sound of engines screaming overhead and explosions in the distance. His military training kicked in before he was fully awake. He rolled out of bed and grabbed the rifle he kept hidden under the mattress. "Lisa, get down!" he shouted as he ran to her room. She was already awake, sitting up in bed with fear in her green eyes. The house shook as something big flew over them. Through the window, Jake could see 3 large ships with strange markings dropping smaller craft toward the colony. "What's happening, Dad?" Lisa asked. Jake pulled her out of bed and pushed her toward the closet. "Get inside and stay there no matter what you hear. Do not come out until I tell you." "But Dad, now Lisa." She crawled into the closet and Jake shut the door. He checked his rifle and looked out the window again. The small ships were landing all over the colony and figures in dark armor were getting out. They moved in groups of 6 and carried weapons that glowed with blue energy. Jake had never seen these aliens before, but he knew what they were: slavers. They were here to take people, not kill them. That meant the colonists had a chance if they fought smart. He opened his comm device and sent out an emergency signal to all the other colonists. "This is Jake Morrison. We are under attack by alien slavers. Stay in your homes and fight from cover. They want prisoners, not bodies, so use that against them." Then he went to his shed and opened the hidden box. He put on body armor that still fit after 3 years. He loaded extra ammunition into his pockets. He strapped a knife to his belt and picked up grenades that he had hoped never to use again. The ghost of Arcturus was back. Jake moved through his house like a shadow, checking every window and door. The aliens were moving toward the center of town where most families lived. They were being smart about it too, using stun weapons instead of lethal ones, setting up fields to stop people from escaping. These were not random pirates. This was a professional military operation. The first group of 6 aliens reached his fence. Jake watched them through his kitchen window as they scanned his house with handheld devices. One of them pointed at the front door and said something in a language that sounded like rocks grinding together. Jake waited until they were halfway across his yard, then shot the leader through the head. The alien's body fell backward, and the others dove for cover behind his broken hovercar. Jake smiled grimly. They might be professional soldiers, but they had never fought humans before. He moved to the back window and saw 2 more groups surrounding his house, 12 aliens total. In the old days, this would have been easy. Now he was older and slower, and had his daughter to protect. The aliens started shooting at his windows, with blue energy beams that burned holes in his walls. Jake stayed low and moved from room to room, returning fire when he had good shots. He hit 3 more aliens in the first few minutes, but they were learning fast. One group tried to rush the front door while another attacked from the back. Jake dropped 2 grenades out different windows, and the explosions sent alien bodies flying, but more were coming. He could see them moving through his neighbors' yards. For 20 minutes, Jake held them off, using every trick he had learned in 30 years of war. He used mirrors to see around corners. He fired through walls where he knew they would take cover. He moved constantly so they could not pin him down, but there were too many of them, and they were getting smarter. They started using heavy weapons that could punch through his walls like paper. Soon his house would be destroyed, and he would have nowhere to hide. That was when Jake realized the terrible truth. This was not the main attack. While he was fighting here, other aliens were moving through the colony taking prisoners. He could hear screaming and energy weapons firing all around him, and he could not hear Lisa anymore. Jake ran to the closet where he had hidden his daughter. The door was open and she was gone. On the floor was a small device that was still beeping. A tracker. They had known exactly where to find her. The rage that filled Jake Morrison in that moment was like nothing he had felt since the war. His vision turned red and his hands started shaking. Someone had taken his daughter. Someone had made the worst mistake of their very short lives. He grabbed the military comm device from the hidden box and activated an emergency beacon that he had sworn never to use. The signal would travel faster than light to wherever his old squad members were hiding. It would tell them that Jake Morrison needed help and someone was going to die outside his burning house. He could hear the aliens regrouping. Their leader was talking on a communication device in that grinding rock language. Jake did not understand the words, but he understood the tone. They thought they had won. Through his shattered front window, Jake could see a transport ship lifting. Off from the center of town, Lisa was on that ship. His little girl who laughed at his cooking and helped him with the tomatoes was being taken away by creatures who saw her as property to be sold. The alien leader started walking toward Jake's house. He was tall and covered in scales with 4 arms and red eyes that glowed in the morning light. In one hand, he carried a translator device. He stopped outside the broken fence and spoke in accented English. "Human Morrison," the alien called out. "I am Commander Vex of the Krell Empire. Your colony now belongs to us? Your people will serve us well as slaves? But you have cost me soldiers today. Surrender now, and I will let you see your daughter one more time before we sell her." Jake stepped out of his ruined house holding his rifle. His clothes were torn and bloody. His face was covered in dust and his green eyes burned with cold fury. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but every word carried the promise of death. "You made a mistake taking my daughter," Jake said. "I'm going to come for her. And when I do, I'm going to kill every last one of you." Commander Vex laughed, showing rows of sharp teeth. "One human against the Krell Empire? You are brave but stupid. Your daughter will make a fine gladiator after we break her spirit." Jake smiled, and it was not a nice smile. "You don't know who I am, do you? Let me introduce myself. I'm the ghost of Arcturus. I'm the man who ended the Xanthari War. I'm the human who killed 10,000 aliens without breaking a sweat." The alien commander's red eyes widened as he realized what name he had just heard. Every species in the galaxy knew that name. Every military leader had studied the impossible things Jake Morrison had done during the war. "And you just took my daughter," Jake continued. "So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to come to your homeworld. I'm going to kill everyone who gets in my way. And I'm going to burn your empire to the ground to get her back." Commander Vex raised his weapon. But Jake was already moving. The old soldier was gone, leaving only the ghost behind. Jake stood in the ruins of his house, looking at the emergency beacon in his hands. The small device was sending out a signal that would reach his old squad members wherever they were hiding in the galaxy. He had not used it in 3 years because he had hoped that part of his life was over forever. Now his daughter was gone and the ghost of Arcturus was coming back from the dead. The first response came within an hour. Elena Rodriguez landed her ship in what used to be Jake's tomato garden. The sleek interceptor was painted black with no markings and engines that barely made a sound. Elena climbed out wearing a flight suit and looked around at the destroyed colony. She was shorter than Jake with dark skin and silver hair. Her brown eyes were sharp and missed nothing. During the war, she had been the best pilot in the human fleet. She could fly anything with wings or engines and make it dance in space. Like a bird. "Heard you needed a ride, Ghost," she said, walking over to Jake. "They took Lisa," Jake replied. Elena's face went hard. She had met Lisa many times during the war when Jake brought his daughter to visit the squad. Elena had taught the little girl how to fly simulator programs, and Lisa had called her Aunt Elle. "How many do we kill?" Elena asked. "All of them." The second ship arrived 2 hours later. Danny Chain's transport was bigger and louder than Elena's interceptor. It was painted bright yellow with flame designs on the sides because Danny had never learned to be subtle. He jumped out before the engines finished cooling and ran over to Jake. Danny was small and thin with black hair and a face that always looked like he was planning something dangerous. He was 28 years old and the best demolitions expert Jake had ever seen. During the war, Danny could blow up anything from a door lock to a space station using whatever materials he could find. "Ghost, you old devil," Danny said with a big grin. "I was getting bored selling fireworks to farmers. What do you need blown up?" "Everything," Jake answered. Danny's grin got bigger. "My favorite kind of job." The third member of their squad arrived. That evening, Rick Barnes came in quietly like he always did. One minute Jake was alone, and the next minute Rick was standing behind him without making a sound. It was a skill that had made Rick the deadliest sniper in human space. Rick was tall and pale with blonde hair and blue eyes that seemed to look right through people. He spoke softly and rarely smiled, but Jake trusted him more than anyone else in the galaxy. During the war, Rick had saved Jake's life so many times that they stopped counting. "Heard the dead devils were getting back together," Rick said. "What's the mission?" Jake told them everything. How the Krell had attacked New Haven Colony. How they had taken Lisa while Jake was fighting their soldiers. How the alien commander had laughed when he threatened to come after them. How his daughter was now somewhere in Krell space, probably being trained as a gladiator. Slave. When he finished talking, his three friends looked at each other and then back at Jake. They had all retired after the war, hoping to find normal lives. Elena was running cargo between peaceful worlds. Danny was making fireworks for celebrations. Rick was living alone on a hunting planet far from civilization, but they were still the dead devils. They had been through hell together during the war, and they would not let one of their own fight alone. "So we're going to Krell space," Elena said. "Do we have a plan?" Jake pulled out a datapad and showed them what he had learned about the Krell Empire. It was huge, spanning dozens of star systems with billions of alien soldiers. Their homeworld was called Krell Prime, and it was protected by orbital weapons platforms and a massive fleet. "The slaves are processed on Krell Prime in a facility called the Blood Pits," Jake explained. "It's where they train captives to fight in their gladiator games. Security is designed to keep slaves and not to keep rescuers out." "How do we get there?" Danny asked. "Krell space is on the other side of the galaxy. We need a ship with stealth capabilities and long-range sensors," Jake said. "We need weapons that can punch through Krell armor. And we need inside information about their defenses." Rick nodded slowly. Marcus Cole. Jake had been thinking the same thing. Marcus Cole was a smuggler and black market arms dealer who operated out of Titan Station. During the war, Jake had saved Cole's life during the Battle of Proxima, and the man had sworn he would repay the debt someday. "Cole has contacts everywhere," Elena said. "If anyone knows how to get into Krell space, it's him. Plus he owes you." "Big time," Danny added. "Remember when those Xanthari cruisers had him trapped? You went in alone and got him out?" Jake remembered. It had been a stupid risk that almost got them both killed. But Cole had been carrying medical supplies to a human colony under siege. Good people would have died if those supplies had not gotten through. "Titan Station is 3 days from here," Jake said. "We leave in the morning." That night they sat around a fire in Jake's burned yard and planned their mission. It was insane even by Dead Devil standards. They were going to infiltrate the most heavily defended world in Krell space. They were going to break into a facility designed to hold the galaxy's most dangerous prisoners. They were going to rescue one human girl from a planet of 10 billion hostile aliens, and they were going to do it with just 4 people, and whatever weapons they could buy on the black market. "You know, this is probably a suicide mission," Elena said, staring into the fire. "Probably," Jake agreed. "The smart thing would be to contact the human military," Rick said. "Let them handle it through diplomatic channels." "By the time the politicians finished talking, Lisa could be dead," Jake replied. "Or worse." Danny picked up a stick and poked at the fire, sending sparks into the night sky. "So we do this the hard way, just like old times." "Just like old times," Jake agreed. Elena stood up and looked at the stars above them. Somewhere out there, Lisa Morrison was scared and alone, surrounded by aliens who wanted to break her spirit. But she was Jake's daughter, and she was stronger than they knew. She just had to survive long enough for her father to come get her. "The dead devils ride again," Elena said. Jake looked at his 3 best friends in the galaxy. They had all given up their peaceful lives to help him rescue his daughter. They were willing to die for a mission that might be impossible. They were the only family he had left besides Lisa. "Let's go get my little girl back," Jake said. The next morning they loaded their gear into Elena's ship and left New Haven Colony behind. The other colonists who had survived the attack watched them go. They knew who Jake Morrison really was now. They had seen the ghost of Arcturus in action, and they understood why the galaxy had once feared his name, but they also knew he was just a father trying to save his daughter. And they hoped he would bring her home safe. The ship lifted off and turned toward the stars where the Krell Empire was waiting. The hunt was about to begin. Titan Station orbited a gas giant on the edge of human space where nobody asked questions and everything had a price. The massive structure was built inside a hollowed-out asteroid and served as a meeting place for smugglers, pirates, and anyone else who preferred to stay hidden from government eyes. Elena docked her ship in one of the smaller bays, and the four dead devils walked through corridors that smelled like engine oil and alien spices. The station was crowded with beings from dozens of different species, all conducting business that was probably illegal somewhere. Marcus Cole's shop was located in the lower levels where the lighting was dim and the security cameras did not work. Very well, the sign outside read Cole's Surplus, but everyone knew it was really an arms dealership that supplied weapons to anyone with enough credits. Jake pushed through the heavy door and found Cole sitting behind a desk counting money. The smuggler was a big man with red hair and scars on his hands from years of dangerous work. He looked up when Jake entered and his face went pale. "Ghost," Cole said quietly. "Been a while." "3 years," Jake replied. "I need your help, Marcus." Cole stood up and gestured for them to follow him into the back room where they could talk privately. The walls were lined with weapons from across the galaxy, including some that Jake recognized from the war. Cole sealed the door and activated a privacy field that would stop anyone from listening in. "I heard about New Haven," Cole said. "Word. Travel's fast out here. The Krell hit your colony pretty hard." "They took my daughter," Jake said. Cole's expression changed. During the war, he had met Lisa several times when Jake brought her to visit supply stations. The little girl had been fascinated by all the different aliens and had asked Cole endless questions about his travels. He had grown fond of her bright smile and curious nature. "How can I help?" Cole asked. Jake pulled out a datapad and showed Cole what they needed. A stealth ship capable of reaching Krell space without being detected. Military-grade weapons that could penetrate alien armor. Most importantly, detailed information about Krell defenses and the location of their slave processing facilities. Cole whistled low as he read through the list. "This is heavy-duty stuff, Ghost. The kind of gear that costs serious money and attracts serious attention." "Name your price," Jake said. "It's not about money," Cole replied. "You saved my life at Proxima. I told you then that I owed you a debt. And I meant it. But what you're asking for could get us all killed." Elena stepped forward. "The Krell have been expanding their slave operations for years. How long before they decide Titan Station would make a good target?" "She's right," Danny added. "These aliens don't just take one colony and stop. They keep coming until someone makes them stop." Rick said nothing, but his hand rested on the grip of his sidearm. He was watching the door in case Cole decided to turn them in for the bounty that was probably on their heads by now. Cole thought for a long moment, then nodded. "Follow me." He led them deeper into the station through passages that were not marked on any official maps. They passed storage rooms full of contraband and workshops where technicians modified weapons to avoid detection by government scanners. Finally, they reached a sealed hangar that required Cole's personal authorization to enter. Inside was a ship unlike anything Jake had seen before. It was sleek and black with curves that seemed to bend light around them. The hull was covered in sensor-absorbing material that would make it nearly invisible to most detection systems. "This is the Silent Runner," Cole explained. "Prototype? Stealth corvette built by human military research before the war ended. Officially it was scrapped. Unofficially it ended up in my hands after some creative paperwork." Elena walked around the ship, running her hands over the smooth hull. "Drive systems? Quantum tunnel drive with military-grade navigation computers." Cole answered. "She can cross the galaxy in less than a week, and nobody will see her coming?" Danny examined the weapon systems. "Plasma cannons, fusion torpedoes, and something I don't recognize." "Krell energy weapons," Cole said with a grin. "Salvaged from wrecks and modified to work with human power systems. They pack twice the punch of our regular guns. Jake looked inside the ship and saw a sophisticated control layout designed for a crew of 4. It was perfect for their mission, but he knew Cole was taking a huge risk by giving it to them. "What do you want in return?" Jake asked. "Bring that little girl home safe," Cole replied. "And when you're done with the Krell, maybe you can convince them to stop raiding independent traders." Cole provided them with detailed intelligence about Krell space that he had gathered from his network of contacts. The slave processing facility on Krell Prime was called the Blood Pits, and it was located in the capital city of Vexstar. Security was focused on keeping prisoners inside rather than stopping infiltrators from getting in. "The Krell are arrogant," Cole explained. "They think their homeworld is too well defended for anyone to attack. The orbital platforms can destroy any fleet, but they're not designed to stop a single small ship." "What about ground defenses?" Rick asked. "Standard military patrols and automated security systems," Cole answered. "Nothing you haven't dealt with before during the war." Elena studied the navigation charts. "How do we get past their border patrols?" Cole smiled and handed her a data chip. "Krell merchant ship identification codes. My people acquired them from a trader who won't be needing them anymore. As far as their scanners will know, you're carrying luxury goods to the capital." They spent the rest of the day loading supplies and weapons onto the Silent Runner. Cole provided them with Krell translator devices, environmental suits, and everything else they would need to survive on an alien world. He also gave them something more valuable than any weapon. "This is the layout of the Blood Pits," Cole said, showing them detailed floor plans. "My contact inside the facility sent these out before he disappeared." "The slave quarters are here on the lower levels. The training areas are above that. The command center is at the top." Jake memorized every detail of the building. He planned their infiltration route, their extraction path, and 3 different backup plans in case things went wrong. It was the kind of detailed preparation that had kept the dead devils alive during the war. "One more thing," Cole said as they prepared to leave. "The Krell commander who took your daughter is named Vex. He's got a reputation for being cruel even by their standards. Lisa is probably being held in his personal collection until the next Gladiator Games." Jake's jaw tightened. He remembered the alien who had laughed when he threatened to come after them. Commander Vex was going to learn that threatening Jake Morrison's family was the last mistake he would ever make. "How long until the next games?" Elena asked. 2 weeks, Cole answered. "After that, the survivors get sold to other worlds and you'll never find her." Jake looked at his 3 friends. They had 2 weeks to cross the galaxy, infiltrate the most heavily defended world in Krell space, and rescue his daughter from a facility designed to hold the galaxy's most dangerous prisoners. "We can do this," Danny said with confidence. "Just like old times," Rick added. Elena was already running through pre-flight checks on the Silent Runner. "Let's go get Lisa back." Jake shook hands with Marcus Cole, knowing it might be the last time they saw each other. The smuggler had risked everything to help them, and Jake would not forget that debt. "Thank you, Marcus," Jake said. "Bring her home." "Ghost," Cole replied, "and give the Krell hell for all of us." The Silent Runner lifted off from Titan Station and disappeared into the darkness between stars. Behind them, Marcus Cole watched until the ship vanished, then went back to his shop to destroy all records of their visit. If the dead devils failed, at least no one would be able to trace their mission back to him, but he had faith in Jake Morrison. The ghost of Arcturus had done impossible things before, and he would do them again to save his daughter. The Krell Empire was about to learn why humanity was the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The Silent Runner dropped out of quantum tunnel drive at the edge of Krell space and immediately went into stealth mode. Elena piloted the ship through asteroid fields and nebula clouds, using every trick she knew to avoid detection by border patrols. The fake merchant codes that Cole had provided got them past 3 checkpoint stations without raising any alarms. Krell Prime was a massive world covered in dark cities and industrial complexes. Orbital weapons platforms surrounded the planet, like a deadly necklace ready to destroy any attacking fleet. But the platforms were designed to stop large ships, not a single stealth Corvettes sliding through their sensor nets like a ghost. Jake studied the planet's surface through the ship's scanners. The capital city of Vexstar stretched across an entire continent with billions of Krell citizens going about their daily lives. Somewhere down there his daughter was being held prisoner and time was running out. There, Rick pointed to a section of the city that showed up differently on thermal scans. The blood pits, underground facility with heavy energy signatures. Elena found a landing site in an abandoned industrial district several kilometers from their target. The silent runner touched down between rusted storage tanks and broken machinery where it would not be noticed by passing patrols. The team gathered, their gear in, prepared to enter the heart of the Krell Empire. They wore environmental suits, modified to look like Krell worker clothing from a distance. Translator devices would let them understand the alien language and speak it with reasonable accuracy. Each team member carried enough weapons to level a city block, but the real weapon was Jake's knowledge of how to turn the Krell's own nature against them. "Remember the plan?" Jake said as they left the ship. "Danny creates diversions to pull security away from the main facility. Rick takes position on the tower across the street for overwatch. Elena stays with the ship and keeps the engines warm for a fast exit." "What about you?" Elena asked. Jake checked his rifle and smiled coldly. "I'm going to knock on the front door." The streets of Vexstar were crowded with Krell citizens who looked like walking nightmares. They had scaled skin in shades of gray and green with multiple arms and glowing red eyes. Most were twice as tall as humans and built like living tanks. But Jake had fought worse things during the war. The team split up at a major intersection. Danny disappeared into the industrial sector where he would plant charges in power stations and communication nodes. Rick vanished into the shadows, heading for his sniper position. Elena melted back toward the ship to prepare for their escape. Jake walked alone toward the blood pits, studying the massive structure that rose from the ground like a black pyramid. The building was designed to intimidate, with walls covered in carvings of Krell warriors defeating other species in combat. Guard towers surrounded the facility and patrols of heavily armed soldiers walked the perimeter, but Jake could see the weakness in their defenses. The Krell had never been attacked on their homeworld, so they were not prepared for a small team using unconventional tactics. Their security was designed to keep thousands of prisoners inside, not to stop 4 humans from getting in. Danny's first diversion came right on schedule. An explosion in the power district sent flames shooting into the sky and half the city went dark. Emergency sirens wailed as Krell response teams rushed toward the blast site. The guards at the blood pits looked nervous but stayed at their posts. The second explosion took out a communication hub and cut off contact between the facility and Krell military command. Now the guards were really worried. They could see the fires burning across the city, but could not call for backup or get orders from their superiors. Jake walked up to the main gate wearing his modified environmental suit and speaking in broken Krell language. "New prisoner transport," he said to the guards. "Special delivery from Border Patrol." The guards looked confused. They had not received any notification about new prisoners, but the communication systems were down. One of them activated a handheld scanner and pointed it at Jake. The device showed him as a Krell citizen with proper identification codes. "Where are the prisoners?" the guard asked. "Coming later," Jake replied. "I am advanced security. Need to inspect holding cells first." It was a weak story, but the guards were distracted by the explosions in the distance and the broken communication systems. They argued among themselves in rapid Krell before finally deciding to let Jake inside. They figured one additional guard could not hurt anything. Jake followed them through a series of security checkpoints using stolen access codes that Cole had provided. The interior of the blood pits was even more intimidating than the outside, with corridors lined with cells holding prisoners from dozens of different species. The air smelled like fear and desperation. "Holding cells are down there," one guard said, pointing to a stairway. "Do not take too long. The games begin tomorrow, and we need all prisoners ready." Jake nodded and headed downstairs. The lower levels were darker and more cramped, with hundreds of cells packed with creatures who had been captured from across the galaxy. Most looked broken and defeated, but a few still had fight left in their eyes. He found Lisa in a cell near the end of the corridor. She was sitting on a metal bench wearing a prison uniform that was too big for her. Her dark hair was dirty and her green eyes were filled with fear, but she was alive and unharmed. "Dad?" she whispered when she saw him. Jake pulled off his helmet and smiled at his daughter. "Hey, sweetheart, sorry I'm late." Lisa started crying and reached through the bars to touch his face. "I knew you'd come. I told the other prisoners that my dad would find me." "Of course I came," Jake said as he worked on the electronic lock. "Did you think I would let some ugly aliens keep my little girl?" The lock clicked open and Lisa threw herself into her father's arms. Jake held her tight, feeling the fear and rage that had driven him across the galaxy finally start to fade. She was safe now and nothing else mattered. "How did you get here?" Lisa asked. "Very carefully," Jake replied. "Elena is waiting with the ship. We're going home." That was when the alarm started. The facility's security system had finally detected. The intrusion and emergency lights bathed the corridor in red. Heavy doors slammed shut, sealing off the exits, and Jake could hear the sound of running feet as guards rushed toward their location. "Dad, what's happening?" Lisa asked. "Change of plans," Jake said, pulling out his rifle. "Stay behind me and do exactly what I tell you." The first group of Krell guards rounded the corner and Jake opened fire. His military training took over and he moved with deadly precision, dropping 3 aliens before they could react. More guards appeared and Jake used the narrow corridor to his advantage, forcing them to come at him one at a time. Rick's voice crackled through Jake's comm device. "Ghost, you've got company coming from all directions. Danny's diversions are working, but they won't last much longer." "Copy that," Jake replied as he reloaded. "Moving to extraction point now." He took Lisa's hand and they ran through the facility's corridors. Jake had memorized the layout and knew exactly where to go, but the Krell were sealing doors and activating security systems to trap them inside. It was going to be close. They reached the main elevator shaft and Jake looked up at the floors above. The command center was at the top of the building where Commander Vex was probably coordinating the search. Jake had promised to kill the alien who took his daughter, and he always kept his promises. "Lisa, I need you to climb up this maintenance ladder to the next floor," Jake said. "Elena will meet you there." "What about you?" Lisa asked. Jake smiled, and it was not a nice smile. "I have one more thing to take care of first." He helped Lisa onto the ladder and watched her climb up before turning toward the command center. The ghost of Arcturus had one last job to finish before they went home. Jake reached the command center as alarms screamed throughout the blood pits. The doors were made of reinforced metal, but Danny's explosive charges had weakened the building's structure. Jake planted a small charge on the lock and stepped back. As it blew the door open. Inside he found Commander Vex standing at a control console surrounded by tactical displays and communication equipment. The Krell leader turned when Jake entered and his 4 red eyes widened in recognition. He was even bigger than Jake remembered, with gray scales and muscles that could crush steel. "The ghost of Arcturus," Vex said in perfect English. "You actually came?" "I told you I would," Jake replied, keeping his rifle trained on the alien. "Where is my daughter?" "Safe for now," Vex answered, "but not for long. My forces have surrounded this building. Surrender and I will give you both quick deaths instead of years in the gladiator pits." Jake smiled coldly. "You still don't understand what you're dealing with, do you?" "I didn't come here alone." As if summoned by his words, explosions rocked the building as Danny's charges brought down support columns throughout the facility. Emergency power failed and the lights went out, leaving only the red glow of alarm systems. Through the windows, Jake could see fires burning across the city as Rick provided cover fire from his sniper position. "Your empire is built on fear," Jake said, moving closer to Vex. "You take what you want because nobody fights back. But humans are different. We don't give up and we don't forget." Vex snarled and lunged forward with speed that would have surprised most opponents. But Jake had fought Krell warriors before during border skirmishes. He sidestepped the attack and put 3 bullets into the alien's chest. Vex staggered but kept coming, fueled by rage and alien physiology that could survive massive damage. The fight that followed was brutal and personal. Vex had 4 arms and claws that could tear through metal, while Jake had speed and experience fighting larger opponents. They crashed through furniture and displays, trading blows that would have killed normal beings. Jake finally ended it by using one of Vex's own weapons against him. A ceremonial sword hanging on the wall became a spear that pierced the alien commander's heart. Vex fell to his knees, looking up at Jake with hatred in his dying eyes. "My people will hunt you across the galaxy," Vex gasped. "They will never stop coming." "Let them come," Jake replied. "I'll be waiting." Elena's voice crackled through his comm device. "Ghost, we need to go now. Lisa is safe, but the whole building is coming down." Jake left the dead Krell commander and ran toward the extraction point. The facility was collapsing around him as Danny's charges continued to explode in a carefully timed sequence. Walls cracked and ceilings fell, but Jake had planned for this. He knew exactly where to go and how to get out alive. He found Lisa waiting at a window that overlooked the street. Elena had rappelling gear ready and was preparing to lower Lisa to the ground, where Rick waited with covering fire. The sniper had eliminated a dozen Krell soldiers and was keeping the rest pinned down. "Dad, hurry!" Lisa called out as another. Explosions shook the building. Jake helped his daughter onto the rappelling line and watched Elena lower her safely to the street. Then it was his turn, but as he prepared to follow them down, the floor gave way beneath his feet. Jake fell through collapsing levels of the building, landing hard on a pile of debris. Pain shot through his left leg, and he knew it was broken. Blood ran down his face from a head wound, and his rifle was lost somewhere in the wreckage. Through the smoke and dust, he could see Krell soldiers moving toward his position. Rick's voice came through the comm device. "Ghost, respond. What's your status?" "Building came down on me," Jake replied. "Legs broken. Get Lisa to the ship and go." "Negative," Elena answered immediately. "We don't leave anyone behind." "That's an order," Jake said firmly. "Get my daughter out of here." But the dead devils had never followed orders they didn't like. Danny appeared through the smoke, carrying enough explosive charges to level what was left of the building. Behind him came Rick, moving like a shadow and eliminating any Krell soldiers who got too close. "Time to go, Ghost," Danny said with a grin. "Elena's bringing the ship around for pickup." They pulled Jake from the wreckage and carried him toward the roof as the silent runner descended through the smoke. Elena had pushed the stealth systems to their limit, making the ship nearly invisible to Krell sensors. She landed on what was left of the building's top level with engines at full power. Lisa ran to her father as they loaded him onto the ship. She had tears in her eyes, but she was smiling because they were all together again. Jake held his daughter close as Elena lifted off and pointed the ship toward the stars. Behind them, the blood pits collapsed completely, sending a tower of smoke and flames into the sky. The symbol of Krell power on their homeworld was destroyed, and thousands of prisoners were free. It was the first successful attack on Krell Prime in their history, and it sent shockwaves through their empire. The escape from the planet was harrowing. Orbital defense platforms opened fire as soon as they detected the ship, but Elena flew like she was born in space. She used debris fields and energy storms to mask their escape, while Rick operated the ship's weapons to clear their path. Danny's sacrifice came as they reached the edge of the system. A Krell pursuit ship had locked onto their trail and was closing fast. The enemy vessel was faster and more heavily armed than the Silent Runner, and there was no way to outrun it. "I can slow them down," Danny said quietly. "Give you time to reach the tunnel drive activation point." Jake knew what his friend was planning. "Danny, no. We can find another way." "There is no other way, Ghost," Danny replied. "Lisa needs to get home safe." "That's more important than anything else." Before anyone could stop him, Danny ejected from the ship in an escape pod loaded with his remaining explosives. He flew straight at the pursuing Krell vessel and detonated everything he had in one massive explosion. The enemy ship was destroyed. But Danny Chen was gone. They held a moment of silence for their fallen friend as the Silent Runner engaged its tunnel drive and disappeared into the space between stars. Danny had given his life to save them, and they would never forget his sacrifice. The journey home took 5 days. Jake's injuries healed slowly, but Lisa barely left his side. She told him about her time in the Krell prison and how the other prisoners had helped her stay strong. She had seen terrible things, but she was tougher than her father had realized. "I want to learn how to fight," Lisa said as they approached human space, "so I can help next time." "There won't be a next time," Jake replied, but even as he said it, Jake knew it wasn't true. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and there would always be predators who wanted to take what others had built. The Krell Empire was already planning revenge, and other alien species were watching to see how humans would respond. They returned to New Haven Colony to find it rebuilt and defended by human military forces. Word of Jake's mission had spread through human space, and the government had decided that the outer colonies needed better protection. No one would be caught defenseless again. Jake and Lisa settled into a new house on the edge of town. This time, Jake didn't try to grow tomatoes. Instead, he built a workshop where he could maintain weapons and equipment. Because while he was retired, again the galaxy's deadliest, human was always ready to protect his family. Lisa grew up strong and smart, learning everything her father could teach her about survival and tactics. She never forgot the friends who had died to save her, or the lesson that freedom was something worth fighting for. Years later, when new threats emerged from the dark spaces between stars, it was Lisa Morrison who stood ready to face them. The daughter of the ghost of Arcturus had become a legend in her own right, and the galaxy learned that some things were too dangerous to threaten. The Morrison family had paid a terrible price for their freedom, but they had also sent a message that echoed across the stars. Humans would go anywhere and fight anyone to protect their own. They would never surrender, and they would never forget. And somewhere in the ruins of the blood pits, the ghost of Danny Chun was smiling, because the galaxy was a little bit safer for the people he had died to protect.